Hi, folks. Chuck here again. I thought I'd come on here and start a newish series, which is books that I think you should read if you love books. And if you don't love books, I don't know why you're following me. I'm just some weird bloke on the internet. But I've got a lot of books that I love flogging to people. I don't get as much of a chance anymore now that I'm not actually a bricks and mortar bookseller. Back when I was a bricks and mortar bookseller, often you could not shut me up for the recommendations I would give to my customers, particularly when I had my own bookshop, which was a science fiction, fantasy, and horror specialist bookshop. And as a result of recommendations, a lot of the books that became our bestsellers were not the big, Stephen King's or the latest fantasy blockbusters. They were small runs of independently produced books, not necessarily self-published, because that wasn't really as much of a thing then as it is now. It's going back 12, 14 years. But things put out by indie presses. And small press publishers and things like that I thought were absolutely amazing. And so this is going to be my chance to pitch some of these again, not necessarily in this video, but certainly in some of the future ones. So look, here's some books that I think you will enjoy if you enjoy certain other things. I'll explain what those are. So, The Strange by Nathan Ballingrud. Now, I only recently read this. Nathan Ballingrud is making a name for himself very much at the moment. He's becoming quite a big author. But I hadn't heard anything about this until a friend of mine who likes a lot of the same stuff I do popped up on, I think it was Facebook, and just said, hey, I've really enjoyed this. People should give it a read. I read it. It is amazing. It's really evocative. It's one of those science fiction stories that also has quite a high horror quotient and somehow feels a bit fantastical. If you like Ray Bradbury and you've read Ray Bradbury's stuff, and particularly the Martian Chronicles stories, this will appeal to you. It's basically about it's an alternate history where there was a very early American settlement on Mars, and it's since been abandoned by Earth, and so they're having to do everything themselves, and they're doing it hard. And there's all sorts of other stuff going on behind there, and there's also something seemingly living underground. There might be ghosts. It's very eerie and dreamy, and I absolutely loved it from the first page. It's just got a really atmospheric kind of grip on the reader, and I think everyone should be reading this book. Next book, The Gulp by Alan Baxter. Now, I should start by saying Alan Baxter is actually one of my favourite authors. He's also a mate, so, take that as you read. But gosh, he writes some good stuff. And he writes in a number of different subgenres of horror. He does cosmic horror, which The Gulp is, and this is a collection of 5 novellas, really, that make up a sort of an ongoing combined story of the town of Gulpepper, which is a little regional coastal Australian town where really fucked up shit happens. He also writes sort of paranormal detective fiction. He writes cryptid fiction, often with author David Wood. And he also writes standalones, folk horror, occult fiction, that kind of thing. Again, I think that if you haven't read Alan Baxter, you should definitely do yourself a favor and pick up some of his stuff. But this is possibly one of my favorites. Absolutely love it. Brilliant. And the third book in this series, again, all of the books are made up of sort of interconnected novellas, has only recently come out. So you need to get onto this one straight away so that you can work your way through the second one and onto the third one. Okay? Excellent. Breathers by S.G. Brown. I picked this up when I was really going through a huge zombie phase, and when zombies were huge. I mean, they are still pretty huge, but really, mid to late 2000s. And this is terrific. It's one of those zombie books that is that hits all of the right notes in terms of what you expect from a zombie book, but there's enough kind of unique stuff in there to hold your interest and make it rise above the others. And this is a comedy. A very, very dark comedy, to be sure, but really, really fun. It's basically about, um, you know, the world of tomorrow where there's been this zombie virus going around and, um, you know, people coming back from the dead and what have you. They seem pretty inoffensive, but of course there's a social reaction to that. And then one of the zombies in here discovers that if you eat a certain type of flesh, it kind of heals you, and things get even nastier from that point. Definitely worth a read. And S.G. Brown also writes some amazing, mostly humorous, spec fic stuff, science fiction as well as horror. And this is another author who is one of my favourites and who I will always unquestioningly pick up, their latest book. And you should go out and search for them because well worth a read. Now, Craig DeLuey is an author who I've been following since the start. They used to sort of publish short stories and things, mostly zombie-related stuff in small press publications, and they've gone on to be an absolute powerhouse. They write horror, they write science fiction. They also do historical fiction set during the Second World War. This one came out. What year did this come out? Because this is important. I should have really researched this beforehand. Where are we? 2019. So kind of when things overseas were not going so well, but weren't as bad as they are now. And it's basically about the Second American Civil War. And it is both more, it paints the war as being a lot more monotonous and kind of day by day than you would expect from a war, but also much, much nastier than you might expect as well. It feels real. And I remember reading this and thinking, this might be the way America is headed, regardless of what your politics are. And please don't come at me in the comments if you have an opposing view. A lot of this feels like a fictionalized version of what's going on over there. And I wouldn't put my hand on my heart and say that it's not going to happen, but it's well worth a read. Very confronting stuff. And if you don't like confronting, don't read it. But I think well worth a read. And now here's an older publication that, again, I think people should read. This came out around the sort of turn of the century. God, that makes me sound old. Turn of the century. Nick Harkaway. And this is The Gone Away World. And it reminds me a little bit about of China Mayville's work in that it's that weird blend of science fiction and fantasy with a little bit of horror in there. And it's basically you believe that it's a sort of a post-apocalyptic world, and we don't know what the nature of the apocalyptic was, but it follows a guy who's part of a cleanup crew who are attempting to put out a fire that on a pipeline that supplies much of the world with a much needed resource. And weirdness starts happening. There's this effect that seems to be kind of attacking reality. It has been a while since I've read it, but I think it's due for a reread. It is absolutely amazing. I don't think it got the attention that I think it deserved at the time that it came out, but I would recommend this to anyone. A really great, unsettling read that pulls you in from the first page and keeps you in there. So there's 5 recommendations for books that I absolutely think you should read. So if your to be read pile isn't huge enough already, and I mean only you can judge that, these are books that I think you should at least go and read a bit about, maybe on Goodreads, go and have a look at a few reviews. But if anything there has piqued your interest, or indeed if you've read any of these books and you agree, disagree with my assessment of them being must reads, pop a comment down below, and good reading.